Yu-Gi-Oh! Is full of powerful monsters. Dark Magician is the ultimate wizard in terms of always getting new support, and Blue Eyes White Dragon lives up to its flavor text by continuing to hold this ceiling for strongest normal monster. The elemental forces of Fire King Island live up to their hype, and Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avramax is the kind of card you answer or you lose. On the other end of things are cards that are supposedly quite powerful, but in reality are weaker than the cardboard they're printed on. And we're kicking off this list at number 10 with a card so powerful that the creator of the game only ever made it available to himself. That's right, welcome Yu-Gi-Oh! Enjoyers, list aficionados, and slumbering auto players to Toon World. This continuous spell comes from the 2002 set Spell Ruler, where it released alongside the game's first wave of Toon monsters, including Toon Mermaid, Toon Summon Skull, Manga Ruran, and the Blue Eyes Toon Dragon. Most of Toon World's lore comes from Maximilian Pegasus' matches against Seto Kaiba and Yugi Muto in the final arc to the Duelist Kingdom arc of the Duel Monsters anime. Kaiba was the first to encounter the mischievous and malevolent powers of Toon World in episodes 26 and 27. And he would ultimately fall victim to Pegasus' dark whimsy. Toon World is a magical floating pop-up book capable of transforming regular monsters into jolly, devious cartoons. During his duel against Kaiba, Pegasus corrupts a stolen copy of Blue Eyes White Dragon into Blue Eyes Toon Dragon, a creature with the same stat line and offensive power with the added benefits of becoming a toon. After Kaiba tries to crash a second Blue Eyes into the Toon one, Pegasus explains that, thanks to the power of cartoon physics conferred onto his monsters by Toon World, they cannot be targeted for attacks. There are many ways to define the inherent power of toons, but career power scalers generally agree that cartoon physics involve the warping of reality to ensure a comedic outcome. This is a wide umbrella that includes things like fourth wall breaking, bypassing of all natural laws, and limitless manipulation of the body. In the end, Seto Kaiba is able to eliminate Blue Eyes Toon Dragon by using his Shadow spell to cut off its access to Toon World, leaving it vulnerable to destruction by its original model. But his efforts would prove futile, as Seto still lost in the end. Later in episode 35 to 39, Yugi clashed with Pegasus and his Toon World strategy. By redirecting Pegasus' magical neutralizing force using Living Arrow, Yugi was able to destroy Toon World and therefore all of the toons contained within. But despite the fact that it was eventually defeated, Toon World is incredibly powerful within the lore of the anime. But not so in the TCG, where Toon World is actually the only spell to have exactly no effect. It can be activated at the cost of 1,000 life points, and that's it. Of course, it isn't entirely useless. A Toon monster from Spell Ruler and many from later on would require a Toon World on field to use many of their effects, but this is a long way from the reality-bending card we saw in the anime. And the toons it enables are also weaker than the lore would lead you to believe. All three members of the original lineup have summoning sickness, meaning you have to wait a turn after summoning before they can attack, and they also need you to pay 500 life points to declare at all. If Toon World leaves the field, they all blow up. But even more troubling, unlike in the show, any monsters can attack and destroy a toon. They have no extra protections and way more vulnerabilities than a normal monster. Luckily for toons, they'd enjoy a continuous wave of support over the years. 2005's Dark Beginning 2 introduced Toon Defense, a continuous trap that kind of approximated the anime toon's battle protection by letting you make an attack on one of your low-level toons directed to your life points instead. There were new and stronger toon monsters like Toon Dark Magician Girl, Toon Barrel Dragon, and Toon Blackluster Soldier. But the biggest piece of new toon support was probably Toon Kingdom. A field spell from 2015's Dragon of Legends 2, Toon Kingdom extended protection against destruction by battle and card effects to all of your toons. All you had to do to save them was banish the top card of your deck face down, as many times as you might need to. Your toons were also given blanket protection against targeting by your opponent's effects. This new spell was much closer to the power level of Toon World in the anime, and is ultimately the reason why Toon World takes the bottom spot on this list. Yes, it's much weaker in reality than it is in its lore, but steps were eventually taken to address this and give it its anime power level. Usually, Reaper of the card shows up at the end of things, meaning people's lives, but today it's near the start of our list at number 9. This level 5 Dark Fiend comes from the TCG's first set, 2002's The Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon. In its lore, the Reaper of the cards occupies an interesting position. The card Graveyard, A liminal metaspace for vanquished souls is its domain, where it soars through the dead air with its giant scythe in hunt of lost spirits. First encountered by Yugi and the Duel Monsters anime gang in episode 13 during a shadow game where people stood in for their favorite cards, Reaper of the Cards menaced both Tristan Taylor, the Cyber Commander, and Joey Wheeler, the Flame Swordsman, after they were destroyed by Yami Bakura. We never got to find out what would have happened had Reaper of the Cards caught Tristan or Joey, but we did get to see the Reaper again in the next episode when Panic used it as part of his dark-themed deck. More noteworthy is Reaper of the Cards' subsequent appearances in episode 37. Tristan and Yami Bakura spring Mokuba's soulless body out of the dungeons of Castle Pegasus, but are apprehended by a squad of guards. Unperturbed, Yami Bakura uses his Millennium Ring to manifest Chain Energy, Maneater Bug, and Morphing Jar in physical space, one-shotting Pegasus' entire platoon. The goons are confused to find themselves in a mysterious graveyard, but their confusion turns rapidly to horror with the revival of the Reaper of the Cards. What happens is left off screen, so we must assume the worst. In the TCG, however, Reaper of the Cards has none of its otherworldly powers. Instead, it's a 1 tribute flip monster with the baffling stat line of 1380 attack and 1930 defense, and its effect does little to salvage its situation. On flip, Reaper of the Cards can destroy a trap card on the field. You have the option of targeting a set card, which is then revealed and destroyed if it's a trap, or reset if it's not. This isn't bad, but certainly isn't great. Crimson Ninja is a level 1 that can do the same thing for free, and Reaper stats don't justify its summoning cost. Far from being a powerful entity within its own spiritual domain, Reaper of the Cards is a mostly forgettable card from 20 plus years ago, at least until Konami decides to reprint Panic's cards. Supreme King of Yami Makai, anyone? And I hope everyone's fired up for number 8. Ancient Flamvell Deity is a level 7 Fire Pyro-Synchro monster with 2500 attack and 200 defense. First released widely in the TCG in the 2011's Hidden Arsenal 4 Trishula's Triumph, Ancient Flamvell Deity has a lot going for it in the lore of the Dual Terminal world. The story of that wider world is way larger and more complicated than we need to cover in just this video. But I'll go over the basics. There's a world and it's populated with various tribes, including some major elemental ones. The Flamvell are one of those, and also the Guardians of the Crimson Arts, and they're led by Flamvell Uruquizas. Some alien worms invade and the tribes unify into the Allies of Justice. They win some fights and lose some ground, and the Icebearer tribe loses faith in the Allies of Justice and releases a few giant dragons. The worms get pretty much roasted, and then a new threat emerges from the fabled realm. This goes quite poorly for the fire dinosaurs of the Dirac tribe, who get rocked pretty hard by the fabled until they all merge into a giant rock in their ultimate technique, Dirac Meteor. This part of the world is reduced to a sea of rubble and flame, and the souls of the Dirac who lost their bodies would rise from the ashes, reincarnated into the Neo Flamvell. This giant psychic blossoming of fire led to the stirring of something ancient. A god of primal energy rouses, and the ancient Flamvell deity takes the world stage, immolating all of the fabled lingering in the remains of the Dirac home. But there were still more fabled, so the Icebearer tribe released their sacredest dragon of all, Trishula. And though the three-headed ice beast was kind enough to fully vanquish the fabled fiends, it also started destroying everything else. Trishula and the ancient Flamvell deity would eventually clash, and Trishula would win, extinguishing the reignited hopes of the fire tribes. But while the devastating effects of Trishula's TCG counterpart were a good match for the fearsome footprint of its lore, ancient Flamvell deity dwindles in comparison. Requiring a fire tuner and pyro non-tuners to summon, ancient Flamvell deity is not an easy include in many deck lists, and its effect is also a little disappointing. On synchro summon, deity can banish cards from your opponent's grave equal to the number of cards in their hand, gaining 100 attack for every card removed. The stat boost is totally forgettable, but interrupting your opponent's graveyard can be good. However, Ancient Flamvell Deity is no DD Crow. A synchro summon using specific requirements is not a quick play, and you'll probably struggle to pull it off with the intention of disrupting the grave under the best of circumstances. And then if your opponent happens to have no hand, you get no banishes. There are just so many better generic options for your level 7 synchro summon, where even Gungur, by far the worst of the 3 dragons of the Ice Barrier, is probably better in most situations. Still, Ancient Flamvell Deity isn't terrible. 2500 attack isn't bad, and the fire monster you're putting in the grave for its summon probably want to be there, like Laval Lakeside Lady. But even considering all of that, this is a deity we're talking about. it shouldn't lose to Trace the Magic Swordsman. Unleashing Pandemonium at number 7 is the level 4 Dark Fiend from 2003's Dark Crisis set, Terrorking Archfiend. With 2000 attack and 1500 defense, all signs point to Terrorking being not just good for 2003, but good in general, and the lore backs that up. The Archfiends have been around for a long time, and they're definitely one of Yu-Gi-Oh's most populous archetypes, from the original lineup to the peaks of its aristocratic upper crust, to their extant members from other archetypes. The Archfiends cover a lot of territory, and Terrorking Archfiend was the Archfiend's original big bad. Though Summon Skull did technically debut earlier, and Skull Archfiend of Lightning also released in Dark Crisis, Terrorking has confirmed legions at his command, so for now we can consider him top fiend in terms of lore, at least until 2013's Judgment of the Light and the introduction of Archfiend Emperor. Terrorking Archfiend has a lot of subordinate fiends backing him up, including Dark Bishop Archfiend, Deathstroke Archfiend, Shadow Knight Archfiend, Vile Pawn Archfiend, and even a partner in Infernal Queen Archfiend. And there's actually even more to discuss, because Terrorking has a ton of artwork features in other cards. Let's run down the list. Archfiend's Roar, Archfiend's Oath, Battle Scarred, Castle Link, Checkmate, Counterattack Beacon, Dice Knight, Dice It, Dice Versity, Flash Effect, Rainbow Light, Subspace Battle, that's 6, and we might as well throw in Terrorking Salmon into the mix too, since its name is derived from the original Terrorking. But as promising as all that is, Terrorking Archfiend's effect is about as strong as the king is in Game of Chess. Let's get the worst out of the way first. Terrorking Archfiend cannot be normal summoned or special summoned unless you already control an Archfiend monster. Sure, you can set it, but I don't know why you would. Slightly less bad is Terrorking's not optional 800 life point maintenance cost during your standby phase, but that doesn't help. This card might be both difficult and costly to use, but there are some upsides at least. When Terrorking is targeted by an opponent's effect, he can roll a 6-sided die to negate and destroy on a 2 or 5. While this isn't really reliable, it might dissuade your opponent from making the optimal play if there's a risk doing so might not pan out. Monsters that Terrorking destroys in battle also have their effects negated, which is pretty nice, especially given the prevalence of powerful flip effects in early Yu-Gi-Oh! But these positive points are not enough to justify Terrorking's negative qualities, and the actual performance of this card is way out of sync with its lore prominence, earning it a spot on this list. And churning and turning a spot at number 6, we have World Gears of Theurlogical Demiurgy. This Link 3 Cypress monster is tied for the highest attack of its type at a whopping 3,500, and released as an ultra rare in the 2019 set Dark Neostorm. Introduced in the final arc of the World Legacy story, World Gears of Theurlogical Demiurgy is a divine machine, built to enact the will of the creator god, or whatever consciousness happens to pilot it. Like with the Dual Terminal world, the World Legacy world is much bigger than this list, but we'll give the events leading to the emergence of the World Gears a brief overview. In a world overrun with dangerous insect drones called crawlers, some young adventurers discover an ancient ruin that houses great magic. They learn about the world legacies, artifacts from a different age that together hold world-ending or world-redeeming power. They venture out in search of new legacies and get in some major fights. Former friends betray them, former enemies align with them, even bigger fights happen, and also tragedy strikes. Determined to revive a fallen ally, one of the adventurers later accidentally revives a monster, doing incredible damage to their planet in the process. Using her awakened power, the monster activated the brain of the world's autonomous immune system, the Deus Ex Crawler. This biomechanical insect further threshed the surface of the world, revealing the power sealed at its center, the World Gears of Theurlogical Demiurgy. The evil part of the monster merged her soul with the World Gears, which promptly went haywire, and the prophesized world hero ascended to counter the very forces of creation that run amok. No force could ever rival the abandoned machinery of the creator god, but the hero instead intervened with the sacred soul of the monster, allowing the long-lost soul of his fallen ally to merge with the World Gears to become Avita, rebuilder of worlds. Then some other stuff happens, but that's a very condensed yet still long recap of the World Legacy lore. Now let's look at the card. The 3,500 attack is pretty great, but let's see the effect. It cannot itself be used as a link material, though it is immune to the effects of other monsters. Then it has 2 more abilities, and then each can be used once per turn. During your main phase, if the World Gears were summoned using all monsters with unique types and attributes, then it can destroy every other card on the field. The materials required to summon World Gears are 3 level 5 or higher monsters, which aren't impossible to field, but are expensive. Where things get more difficult is not repeating a type or attribute so that you can use World Gear's first effect. While some archetypes use different attributes and some use different types, finding a cohesive group of cards that utilize a diverse spread of both is a little difficult. While not impossible, World Gears of Theurlogical Demiurgy has seen one competitive placement in a deck running generators. This really limits your options to effectively use the card. World Gear's second effect activates in response to your opponent summoning from the extra deck, allowing you to cheat out a World Legacy monster from your main deck. While this is good, it's not on level with the World Gear story. There are other apocalyptic boss monsters across Yu-Gi-Oh's various lores, like Avita, Rebuilder of Worlds, Tiara, Source of Destruction, and Sophia, Goddess of Rebirth. And although they're all pretty hard to use, they at least are huge forces when they hit the field. Conceptually, World Gears of Theurlogical Demiurgy is on par with these other creatures, but what sets it apart is that it's kind of easier to summon in comparison. Easier to summon, still hard to utilize, also not game-endingly strong in practice. That's World Gears of Theurlogical Demiurgy. If you need a board wipe, it's much easier to use Black Rose Dragon. Switching gears from big bosses with lots of effects, we have a low-level normal monster at number 5. Divine Dragon Ragnarok is a level 4 light dragon with 1500 attack and 1000 defense that released in the 2005 set Flaming Eternity. Its flavor text reads, "A legendary dragon sent by the gods as their instrument. Legend says that if provoked, the whole world will sink beneath the sea." That's pretty intense. The name Ragnarok takes inspiration from a series of cataclysmic events in Norse mythology that culminate in the ending of the world of gods and men, and this monster is that apocalypse made manifest. But as the allegedly direct agent of the gods, Divine Dragon Ragnarok should probably have a word with its employers, because this god was kind of a flop. Only 1500 attack? This dragon might hold the power to drown the world, but it's not winning many fights. Jerry Beansman and Sonic Duck send it packing. It does have King Dragon, a fusion that's the result of combining it with Lord of D, and the monster's actually really good, giving protection from effects to your dragons while letting you extend into another dragon from hand. King Dragon has a ton of competitive placements, but none of those decks use Divine Dragon Ragnarok. Instead, they mostly relied on Metamorphosis to bypass King Dragon's steep resource costs, but that card has been banned for many years. In GOAT format, both Metamorphosis and King Dragon decks are a thing, and even sometimes run Divine Dragon Ragnarok and Lord of D, but that's not enough to save Ragnarok from catching a spot on this list. Though they don't have archetype support to draw them together at the time of script writing, there are other Divine Dragons in Yu-Gi-Oh! Some of them are pretty good, like Saphira, Divine Dragon of the Voiceless Voice, and Divine Dragon Apocryph, and some are pretty mid, like Divine Dragon Excellion and Divine Dragon Aqua Bazaar, but only Ragnarok is a normal monster. Technically, the Divine Dragon token summoned by White Aurora Behemoth is also normal, but it's actually useful, while Divine Dragon Ragnarok is just number 5. The Winged Dragon Ra might be number 1 amongst the Egyptian gods, but it's number 4 on this list. A level 10 Divine Attribute Divine Beast monster, the Winged Dragon of Ra's base stats are !/?, with the TCG's first copies arriving as special promotion cards with Shonen Jump magazine in January of 2011. According to lore, the Winged Dragon of Ra is about as powerful as cards get. In ancient times, only the Pharaoh could control the power of the 3 legendary beasts, Obelisk the Tormentor, Slifer the Sky Dragon, and the Winged Dragon of Ra. In the modern age, both Seto Kaiba and Merrick Ishtar were able to harness the power of the gods, but that doesn't diminish their power. Thought to be the strongest of the 3, the Winged Dragon of Ra is difficult to wield. Its base stats become the sum of its tributes, meaning you get out of Ra what you put in, and the Winged Dragon can also put out a ton of damage. Using its power instant attack, Ra can attack all opponent's monsters and your opponent directly at once, and still launch that attack under conditions when you normally couldn't, like through Swords Revealing Light or Nightmare Steel Cage, or even during your opponent's turn. And that's not even the extent of Ra's powers. Before throwing out this attack, you could offer sacrifice of life points and monsters to turbocharge Ra's stats, and we haven't even gotten to its Phoenix form yet, first revealed during Yami Merrick's duel against Joey Wheeler in episode 127 of the Duel Monsters anime. But how does the Winged Dragon of Ra fare in the TCG? Well, for a dragon capable of firing off blaze cannons, Ra's actually not doing so hot. While Ra in the anime shares the Egyptian god vulnerabilities of returning to the graveyard at the end of the turn that it's special summoned, TCG Ra cannot be special summoned at all. Instead, it's a 3 tribute normal summon that cannot be set. On the flip side, Ra's normal summon cannot be negated, and effects cannot be activated in response. But this protection elapses the moment Ra is sitting on the field, making it easy prey for most forms of removal. On normal summon, you can pay life points down to 100 to boost TCG's Ra's points by the same amount, but this directly conflicts with Ra's other ability. By paying 1000 life points, Ra can target and destroy a monster on the field. You can activate this effect as many times as you want, but if you've already paid life points down to 100, you better want nothing because that's all you're getting. Later, support would try to mold the TCG Winged Dragon Ra into something that closely resembled Ra the lore, but ultimately that was just a lot of extra cards and text to make a clunky deck that's fun, but only kind of works. And Bursting Brighten at number 3 is a card supposedly more powerful than all of the gods, Blue Eyes Shiny Dragon. A level 10 light dragon with base 3000 attack and 2500 defense, Shiny Dragon was first released as a special promo card distributed at showings of Yu-Gi-Oh! The Movie, Pyramid of Light, over the course of its theatrical run, beginning in August of 2004 in the United States and November the same year in Japan. Following his defeat in the semifinals of Battle City, Seto Kaiba is caught in a funk. He lost his own tournament and his god card to Yugi, and his whole motivation for putting together this citywide event in the first place was to do the opposite of both of those things. But Seto is not and has never been complacent. He travels to meet Pegasus, demanding access to any cards the game creator might have designed to counter the Egyptian gods. They duel about it, and Seto clears Pegasus no problem, illustrating how far we've come since Duelist Kingdom and how useless Pegasus is without his Millennium Eye. This is how Kaiba comes into possession of the Blue Eye Shiny Dragon, a card to rival the gods. He also loots Pyramid of Light, but that was planted there by the evil spirit Anubis, and that's where the plot of the movie gets rolling. Pyramid of Light is another card that fits the criteria of this list, but including 2 feature cards from the same movie feels lazy, so maybe I'll explore that further in the sequel list someday. Or maybe not. I'm the TheDuelLogs' writer, and there are many duel lists to be made. But Blue Eye Shiny Dragon. The movie establishes that it's a super powerful special ability called Shiny Diffusion. By attributing itself, Blue Eye Shiny Dragon can destroy any cards, multiple, its owner desires. That was the out for the gods that Pegasus planned. But Kaiba uses Pyramid of Light instead, successfully removing the gods while also causing the energy of their duel to feed the resurrection of the dark spirit Anubis. Eventually, Kaiba tries to destroy the pyramid, causing Anubis to manifest and make all of the monsters real. Luckily, Yami Yugi is able to gain control of the Blue Eye Shiny Dragon and redirect Kaiba's god-toppling ace in the holes of Anubis, meaning Shiny Dragon is not only capable of destroying the Egyptian god cards, but also the actual Egyptian Lord of the Dead. In the TCG, Blue Eye Shiny Dragon occupied a unique tier of bad. Though Shiny Dragon was released since its movie's release in 2004, its companion card, the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, wouldn't actually become part of the TCG until January of 2006, as a Shonen Jump magazine promotional material. This was a problem, because the only way to special summon Blue Eye Shiny Dragon is from your hand by attributing a face-up Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, meaning Blue Eye Shiny Dragon was unplayable on release, and for a few years after. But players weren't actually missing out on much. Like the gods themselves, Blue Eye Shiny Dragon's most powerful abilities didn't transfer from screen to card. It gains 300 attack for every dragon in your grave, and can negate the effects of effects that target it. But that's all. You aren't even guaranteed that Blue Eye Shiny Dragon can out-attack the Ultimate Dragon you're hypothetically tributing for the summon, since the 3 Blue Eyes plus Ultimate of the Grave results in a Blue Eye Shiny Dragon with only 4200 attack. Thawing out the number 2 spot is Prior of the Ice Barrier, a level 2 water attribute aqua monster with 1000 attack and 400 defense from 2011's Photon Shockwave set. Remember back during number 8 when I went through all of the dual terminal story to properly contextualize the lore powers of ancient Flamvell Deity? Well, hopefully nobody fell asleep for that part, because we're going to keep building on that here. Where we left off with the dual terminal story, the ancient Flamvell Deity had just been fizzled by Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, newly freed and wreaking havoc. Trishula had eliminated the remainder of the fabled threat as planned, but had also just started doing a bunch of super powerful 3-headed ice dragon things, like raising villages and flash freezing anything that moved. The power of Trishula, and to a lesser extent fellow ice dragons Brionac and Gungnir, begs the question, how did they get locked in the ice in the first place? In the distant past, long before the arrival of the worms or incursion of the fabled, a sorcerer dwelled in the northlands of constant snow and hard-packed ice. This was Prior of the Ice Barrier. And it was he who used the Mirror of the Ice Barrier to seal away the great beasts. Such was his daring and magical prowess. In the modern age, long past the prior's mortal years, his spirit still watches over his acolytes and successors, who became the Ice Barrier tribe. Just when the awakened dragons were poised to freeze the world, the spirit of Prior manifested as the sacred spirit of the Ice Barrier, and used his own essence to power one last act of sealing magic, Void Trap Hole. Though the sacred spirit would exhaust his own vitality, the dragons were once again contained, and the world would be safe from their rage. So, with all of that established, when you look at Prior of the Ice Barrier's lore, we've got strong instincts and a highly predictive mind coupled with transcending beyond life and death, plus mastery over dimensional magic, and a healthy dose of good charisma, since he did establish one of the Dual Terminal's most prominent elemental tribes. So there's a lot going for him. Now, let's see how Prior of the Ice Barrier, the card, stacks up. Prior of the Ice Barrier can special summon itself from your hand while you control another Ice Barrier monster, and that's a solid start. But unfortunately, it gets worse. On the turn you activate its effect, you're locked out of summoning high-level monsters. This is unfortunate, since the goals of your Ice Barrier strategies usually revolve around fielding your bigger guys, including explosive synchro dragons like Trishula, but also main deck high-level Ice Barriers with control effects like Raiho General the Ice Barrier. On the field, Prior the Ice Barrier can tribute itself to special summon an Ice Barrier monster from your graveyard, which is very good. But of course, if you try and use this effect on the same turn Prior special summon itself from your hand, your revival selection pool and ceiling for what you might do with them are both considerably reduced. Still, it'd be wrong to call Prior of the Ice Barrier totally bad. But his negative synergies really sting, since Ice Barriers were never particularly strong as a strategy anyway. Though later years would provide new support with powerful cards like Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier, Speaker for the Ice Barrier, and Lancia Ancestral Dragon of the Ice Mountain, the deck didn't really impact its meta, and definitely wasn't making any competitive moves in 2011 when Prior released. Ultimately, Prior of the Ice Barrier's power within the Dual Terminal world was extremely high, with his actions having a drastic impact on world events spanning multiple eras. In contrast, the Prior of the Ice Barrier in the TCG was totally forgettable, but does get some compensation in the form of landing at number 2 on this list. And at number 1, supreme sovereignty over this list goes to Supreme Sovereign Serpent of Golgonda, a level 8 fire reptile from 2021's Lightning Overdrive set with question mark attack and 0 defense. Now, we've already talked about Dual Terminal World, the World Legacy World, and the Anime World, so it's probably about time we dive into the Albaz mythos. Beginning on a continent called the Isolated Land, this saga follows the fallen of Albaz, a lost dragon boy who fell out of the sky, and Dogmatica Ecclesia the Virtuous, the 665th saint to serve Dogmatica Maximus, the ideological leader of the Dogmatica nation. Across the Isolated Land, dimensional rifts periodically open and deposit all manner of detritus, including technology, magical artifacts, and even living entities. One of those anomalies, called Holes, drops a Titan-clad the Ash Dragon in the middle of a standoff between Tri-Brigade and the Dogmatica forces. Dogmatica Fleur-de-Lis the Knighted smites the dragon, whose colossal form melts away into the fallen of Albaz. Ecclesia is unwilling to execute the scarred boy, resulting in Tri-Brigade standoff. This leads to the Dogmatica forces turning on their 665th saint, and the Tri-Brigades whisk Albaz and Ecclesia away to their base and a temporary safety. Knowing the two would be hunted by the Dogmatica nation, the leaders of the Tri-Brigade suggest Albaz and Ecclesia track for the wilds in the Great Sand Sea, Golgonda, where Tri-Brigade Frigid the Barren Blossom's little sister Kit has been staying, far from the Dogmatica nation, in the care of the practical Spriggans. Impressed with Albaz, Shirai entrusts him with the care of Tri-Brigade Mercurier. When the Spriggans eventually encounter Albaz and Ecclesia adrift in the Golden Dunes, this is what vouches their arrival as allies, despite the holy Dogmatica stigmata worn by Ecclesia. While Albaz and Ecclesia are making new friends, Dogmatica Maximus has crowned the 666th saint, and having done so enacts a dark ritual. The stigmatas gifted over the years are revealed to be brands, conduits for the energies of the abyss beyond the holes. The sky tears open above the Dogmatica nation, and its citizens are warped into despots. This event is what finally brings us to Supreme Sovereign Serpent of Golgonda, A huge desert snake, Golgonda is the apex predator and namesake of the Great Sand Sea. It is a giant and fierce beast, and largely responsible for the Spriggan's nomadic nature. When the Great Serpent moves through the sands, you better move too, or else you're lunch. But the living occupants of Golgonda aren't the extent of the Supreme Sovereign Serpent diet. The Great Snake has feasted on the holes themselves, incorporating them into the bulk of its body. That's right, Supreme Sovereign Serpent of Golgonda was so hungry it consumed dimensional portals, and everything they yield in turn. This becomes a major problem with the advent of Dogmatic of Maximus's Dark Ritual, the abyss energies coursing through the immense body of the Serpent of Golgonda thrown into an intense rage. That is only quelled by Dogmatica Fleur-de-Lis the Knighted using the powers unlocked by her time studying abroad with the Sword Souls. Turns out, Fleur-de-Lis has been on a solo quest ever since the exile of Dogmatica Ecclesia the Virtuous, and found a way to seal her stigmata before it could become a brand, arriving to support her squire and wayward dragon boy just in the nick of time. In the TCG, Supreme Sovereign Serpent of Golgonda has seen no competitive play, which is interesting because it's not totally awful. If you control a face-up field spell, you can special summon Supreme Sovereign Serpent of Golgonda from your hand or grave, making it pretty flexible as an extender with a helpful level 8. When summoned this way, Supreme Sovereign Serpent will banish itself upon leaving the field, but while it sticks around, it can banish a monster from grave once per turn to protect your Great Sand Sea Golgonda from being destroyed by card effects. This is important because, while Great Sand Sea is on the field, the original attack of the Serpent of Golgonda becomes 3000. Otherwise, it's a big 0. So, overall, this card isn't the worst, and you could probably set up some interesting plays with it, but ultimately this card fails to meet the expectations set by its epic card artwork and lore. Many of the creatures on this list are strong because Konami or somebody told us they're strong. The Winged Dragon Ra is just another big guy, and Blue Eye Shiny Dragon is just another iteration of Blue Eyes. They're things we've seen before and we'll see again. Supreme Sovereign Serpent of Golgonda has 2 different adjectives meaning powerful in its name, and has a way cooler conceptual bias for its strength. The Serpent of Golgonda isn't just another big creature, but a big creature that's done something. Its consumption and incorporation of the rifts that incite the entire lore of the isolated land is a crazy resume, and you'd really expect it to have a way more interesting effect. That expectation and failure to actualize is what earns Supreme Sovereign Serpent of Golgonda its number 1 spot. Alright, and that's the list. But there are a ton of other cards that could have found their way into this video. So if I missed your favorite, or if you have more ideas for future videos just like this one, I'd love to write them down in the comments.